And the 4th annual Indianapolis 8 Hours is in the books. There is plenty to talk about, and yeah, it's cold. Welcome to Mighty Mac on YouTube. All right, well, that's not a race I expected to play out like it did. I came into this race saying that it was anyone's game. It was anyone's game if you have a circle that says BMW in the front. It was pretty obvious from the word go that BMW was going to be the team, the cars to beat, and more specifically if your initials for your team is WRT. From the first corner, these cars, they just took off and they ran. And you know what? Nothing could catch them. Not the defending winners, not the factory Mercedes, which also were the defending winners, nothing. So let's kind of talk about the race a little bit.
Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what you said, from the wave of the American flag at the start of this race, WRT, I mean, they didn't lead maybe 10 laps of this race, and that was maybe 20, led by the 999 Mercedes. But yeah, just unbelievable showing. Probably the most dominant victory we've seen in this race. Yeah, just
second most.
Yeah.
Because the first most dominant victory also goes to BMW in the inaugural event in 2020. At that time, it was the M6, and it was Team WRT that took the victory in a rather narrow pickings field. But this was definitely a quality field. The car variety is not as good as we've seen in years past, but definitely the field was very competitive outside of the BMWs. But no, it was a fantastic event still. It kept us on the edge of our seats till the very end because of unknowns. And we'll kind of dive into that. So kind of to recap the race a little bit, the WRT car, it was leading before turn 1. They qualified second, or they qualified fourth, excuse me. It was the two Mercedes that qualified second and third, but they jumped to the lead in turn 1, and they just kind of set sail from there. It was a strong showing from them from the beginning. Augusto Farfus started a little bit deeper in the field. He started cutting through. It wasn't really traffic if you're racing them, but he was cutting through all the competitors in front of him, and it was a WRT 1-2 from very early stages in the race. And we also had a couple incidents today. Actually, 2 cars in particular had 3 incidents in particular in the same particular spot on the track, i.e. the Acura, the Racer's Edge Acura, and the number 85 Porsche. They did the same thing in the same spot 3 times.
Yeah, maybe that's my bad because I talked about their woes at Sebring, but yeah, just, you know, it's one thing when, you know, one driver has the same kind of incident 3 times in a race, but it's another thing when the same 2 cars have the same incident 3 times in a race. But outside of that, I mean, relatively clean. You know, didn't have any major offs, major wrecks, just had a couple mechanical issues. And
yeah, and speaking of mechanical issues, first and foremost, the number 91 DXDT Racing Mercedes, it caused the only safety car of the day. They came to a stop in around turn 3, if I remember correctly, and that car never got going again. Also, we had a transponder fail on another Mercedes, and the Bimmer World BMW dropped out of the race with 19 minutes left to go in this race. They came in, the car was steaming pretty heavily, as you can see in this clip, and they ultimately retired. Now, at the time, they were second in the GT World Challenge America pecking order, and they were 5th in the overall pecking order. And for that team, this is the first time that they have not won a class here at the 8 Hours of Indianapolis. They were picture perfect. That team of Robbie Foley, Bill Oberlin, and Chandler Hull, they've had a pretty impressive run to this point, but unfortunately that came to an end today.
yeah, and you know, BMW had a very strong day in terms of factory-supported teams. The customer-supported efforts didn't fare so well. The Samantha Tanton racing car also just kind of struggled. But the Bimmer World car had pace, not race-winning pace, but top 5, top 10 pace. And it was unfortunate to see them have those issues in the end.
And also to kind of put a stamp on those 2 privateer BMW M4s from Samantha Tan Racing and from Bimmer World, those both suffered from refueling issues where they can only get the fuel tanks about half full, so they had to make more pit stops than the factory sister cars from WRT. fifth place for most of the running was the Wright Motorsport car. They were never on the pace. They are the GT Pro winner, or the Fanatec GT World Challenge winner. They came home in fourth. We'll get to the full rundown here in a moment. But it was not a clean day for WRT. They had some run-ins with each other, including here in the pit lane. They had a run-in with each other, a bump and run in turn 8. One car had a slow puncture, and that was the number 31 car. The number 30 car had a drive-through. Let's talk about the number 31 car real quick. They were in contention the entire race, along with the number 30. Both WRT cars were up there. But this very bizarre incident where Augusto Farfus, one of the more experienced BMW factory drivers, he's been with them for over 10 years, made a very big misjudgment going into turn 1, and he took out one of the Ferraris in the field and ultimately broke a toe link. He struggled to limp that car around the track, but they were able to repair it and get it back out. However, the damage was done. They relegated him to 18th place by the time they made the repairs, and finishing up in 17th.
Yeah, the commentator talked about it, very reminiscent of the 2021 incident with Callum Ilott. Both incidents that were totally preventable. Both were race-ending issues for cars that were probably going to win the race, let's be honest. But, I mean, I don't know. They still were able to claw back somewhat, but that was, it happens. It was just kind of a racing deal.
Now, shout out to the guy over here that's riding a pallet jack, by the way. Yes.
Of course it is.
So, huh?
OSHA violation.
That is an OSHA violation. So, at the time of the 31 cars... At the time of the number 31 car's strife, the number 30 car gained the lead with a 21-second lead over the Craft Bamboo Mercedes. For Mercedes, that was almost as a perfect race as you could ask for the two factory-backed entries. There's only one issue with them all race long. The number 77 car ended up having a splitter issue where it was dragging around the track, and then it had a very enticing battle at the end with the Group M, the number 999 man filter car, for second place in the end. What a great race between those two.
Oh yeah, I mean, for the last hour, you could see the 999 clawing in and closing that gap, and he just ran out of time. That's the classic racing story, but I mean, he was probably within a good, I'd say 10 car lengths or so, especially with lap traffic. It could have played out for the Group M car.
And another note real quick, crowd strike by Riley, the number 04 Mercedes. They end up claiming the Pro-Am championship here in the Fanatec GT Challenge America. It was a great battle between them and Wright Motorsports, their Pro-Am entry all day. Unfortunately, the challenge from the Wright team came to an end with a puncture on the car, on one of the tires, having to make an extra pit stop. That Wright entry was the one with Callum Ilott aboard, and it was setting up to be a really great battle to the end between those two. They were together for over half the race. I mean, right next to each other on the track, duking it out. And ultimately, we were robbed of that battle a little bit. But for the Riley guys, that's big.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the grid walk with Nolan Siegel being on that team. He had an impressive day in that car. Before the puncture with the Wright Motorsports team, they were, it was actually Callum Ilott and Nolan Siegel racing each other. And again, impressive showing out of that kid. I just wanted to mention that because I'm impressed.
All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the top 10, as you will see here on the screen momentarily through magic. The number 30 Team WRT car with Philip Eng, Dries Vanthoor, and Sheldon van der Linde takes the win. Second place, Mercedes-AMG Team Craft Bamboo takes second place, the defending winners from last year. And then in third place, Mercedes-AMG Team Group M. That's the man filter car, the 999, and third, that's Mauro Engel, Lucas Stoltz, and Daniel Hunkadea. In fourth place, Wright Motorsports ends up claiming fourth and winning in the GT World Challenge America. RS1 in their Porsche 992, the one that has Klaus Bachler, the factory driver on board, finished fourth. RS1 in their Porsche finished in fifth. In sixth place, CrowdStrike Riley, your Pro-Am winners. And then in seventh place, Huber Motorsports, your pole sitters from today, ended up claiming second in the Pro-Am class. MDK Motorsports ended up claiming eighth. Ninth place goes to TR3 and their Mercedes, a team that had a very late call-up today of Kent and Cook. They ended up at the back of the grid at the beginning, but they charged their way into the top 10. And Wright Motorsports in 10th place, falling back to 4th after a late pit stop for them. Final thoughts here from Indianapolis for 2023. So it was another fantastic event. We ended up with some amazing fireworks and welcoming home a new winner. Second time BMW has won here. They are the first manufacturer to repeat, but we've had 4 different cars win here. The M6 won in 2020. This is the first one here for the M4. 4 different teams. It's the first North American win for Team WRT. We had a record distance today. It proved great action. You know, it was a 50-second margin of victory, but it still was a thrilling race for second. There was battles up and down the grid. It was a fantastic race, as always. It never has disappointed. It wasn't as close as last year, but it was still just as enticing to watch.
Oh yeah, and this race, it's the hidden gem of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It goes into the night, you get your beautiful sunset views of the Speedway, you get fantastic GT3 racing, you get drama, you get 8 hours of racing, and it's all you can ask for. If you haven't came out to this race, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and unlike some other YouTubers out there, we actually cover GT cars when there's no prototypes on the track. So that really wraps it up here from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for not just this event, but for the year 2023. There's still one more event to come, and I tell you what, it's been a fantastic year. Never in our lives did we think we'd be here, and man, it's just amazing. So we're gonna wrap it up for Brody Banta, for Kevin Rollins here, and for Mr. Mighty Mac himself behind the camera this weekend. You'll see him in front next weekend. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in Dallas.
Yep.